Welcome to this online course in constitutional law. My name is Akhil Reed Amar. I'll be the instructor for the course, and in this introductory lecture, I'd like to outline for you what this course is all about so you can decide whether it's right for you. Constitutional law, as the phrase implies, is a course about the law of the Constitution, and it's a course that will focus on the Constitution itself, the written Constitution. The course in some ways will revolve around the written Constitution, but we will, in the course of the semester, go beneath, beyond, and behind the words of the Constitution, while never losing sight, we hope, with the words themselves. It's a course designed for a wide range of students. At one end, I hope even experts in constitutional law might learn something new in this course. People who have taught constitutional law in the law school or in a college, I hope would benefit from some of the things that we'll be talking about over the course of the semester. At the other end, however, this is a course for a broad range of citizens, for non-experts, for students in high school taking AP history or AP government and wanting to get a deeper understanding of the American Constitution and the legal system surrounding the American Constitution. It's a course for people who teach in high school, who teach AP history or AP government, or who just simply want to improve their understanding of American civics. It's a course for journalists and college students and law students and political activists and really, frankly, anyone who wants to understand the Constitution better. It's a course that will unfold over a series of lectures. In this introductory lecture, I want to tell you a little bit about the themes of the course, the substantive themes, and the format of the course. Substantive themes. We will start with the written Constitution, and we will go through the written Constitution in textual order. We'll start with the first sentence of the Constitution, the Preamble. We'll work our way through the written Constitution in textual order. Article 1, the legislature. Article 2, the executive. Article 3, the judiciary. Article 4 is about federalism, about states and their relationship to each other and to the central government. Articles 5, 6, and 7 are about the supremacy of the Constitution, how it can be amended, why it's the supreme, and how it's the supreme law, how it got enacted in the first place, ordained and established. So that takes you through the written Constitution as originally adopted in 1787-88. The Preamble and Articles 1 through 7 in textual order. But the Constitution doesn't end there. Our current Constitution, our written Constitution, it goes on to have a series of amendments, beginning with the first 10, which we call the Bill of Rights, though that phrase isn't in the Constitution itself. It's part of constitutional law, that phrase, but it's not in the document, the terse text itself. The first 10 amendments adopted shortly after the Constitution was ratified, back in the late 18th century. Then we'll examine those amendments, again, working our way through the thing in textual order. Then we'll confront the amendments after the Civil War, the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th Amendment that ends slavery, a 14th Amendment that promises, that guarantees equal citizenship to all born in America as equal citizens, black and white, male and female, Jew and Gentile. We will then encounter amendments from the 20th century, from the Progressive Era, an income tax amendment, the 16th Amendment, and a 17th Amendment about the direct election of senators. We'll talk about how women got the vote, and the 19th Amendment, the suffrage amendment. We'll work our way through to the more modern amendments from the second half of the 20th century, from the 1960s, which restrict poll taxes and give 18-year-olds the vote. So in short, we're going to work our way in the first half of this course through the written Constitution from start to finish. And in the course of doing that, we're also, as a practical matter, going to work our way forward in time, precisely because the amendments have been added in chronological order. So when we go through the original Constitution, we're going to focus on the text that was adopted in the late 1700s. And then as we confront the amendments in textual order, we'll gradually come forward in time through to the modern era. And we're going to end with a 27th amendment, the most recent amendment to be adopted. That was adopted in the lifetime of many of you students. It was adopted recently in the 1990s. So that's the first half of the course, really, is working our way through the written Constitution from start to finish. Now, American constitutional law isn't just about the document itself, this terse text. I'm reaching into my back pocket here to pull out a copy. There are many copies available. It's only 8,000 words, start to finish, including all the amendments. You can read it in about a half an hour, and at the end of this lecture, I'm actually going to invite you, please, to read it before our next lecture. But the 8,000 words of this document don't capture the entirety of American constitutional law. They anchor the project of American constitutional law. They're the foundation of the whole thing, and we never want to lose sight of the terse text, the written document, which is why we're going to walk through the text so carefully for the first half of this course. But, as I said, the text isn't all of American constitutional law. It's the starting point. It's the anchor. And for the second half of the course, we're going to talk about the unwritten Constitution that supplements, without supplanting, the terse text, that we're going to go beyond, beneath, and behind the words of the document, while, we hope, never losing sight of the document itself. You see, because the document itself doesn't say the rule of law, doesn't say separation of powers in so many words, doesn't say checks and balances, doesn't say federalism, doesn't say the Bill of Rights, doesn't say one person, one vote, doesn't say that racial segregation is inherently unequal. And yet all of those things are parts of American constitutional law, our constitutional system. And so in the second half of the course, we're going to explore the unwritten Constitution that supplements the written Constitution. And the trick here is going to be trying to figure out ways of going beyond the Constitution without losing connection to the Constitution. The Constitution itself, for example, doesn't have an explicit set of rules about how it should be interpreted. That's part of the unwritten Constitution itself. How do we interpret the written Constitution? The written Constitution itself says there may be unwritten, unenumerated rights, but it doesn't quite tell us in great detail how to find those unwritten rights. But the Constitution itself, the written text, the terse text, gestures beyond itself in all sorts of ways. And in the second half of the course, we're going to take the text's invitation to go outside of it, ultimately in order to redeem the text, to make sense of the text, to fully understand it as a comprehensive whole. And the way we're going to do that is by focusing on and deploying various tools and techniques of constitutional interpretation, each one that goes beyond the literal text understood in a very narrow way. So we're going to go beyond narrow literalism and yet ultimately try to make sense of the text as a whole and the project of American constitutional law as a whole. In other words, we are all textualists, and we are all, in a sense, living constitutionalists as well. We are both. American constitutional law involves both the terse text and various tools and techniques for going beyond literalism while remaining faithful to the American constitutional project. So in a nutshell, that's what we're going to do over the course of the semester. The first half of the course will be focused on the written Constitution, the terse text, and the second half will go beyond the written Constitution in various ways. Now, in order to give more structure to our journey together over the course of this semester, I'm going to be tracking fairly closely 2 books that I've written for a general audience designed to introduce them to first the written Constitution and then to the unwritten Constitution. These texts are not required reading for the course. You can experience this online course just by watching the lectures and participating in the online activities that we've got planned for you. But if you'd like a deeper understanding of the material that we will be covering in this course, I would invite you to try to read these 2 recommended books. They're not required, they're recommended. And the lectures for this course will be tracking those 2 books. The first one is called America's Constitution. The subtitle is A Biography. And it walks you, the reader, the ordinary citizen, the high school student, the journalist, the teacher, the civics teacher. It walks you through the written Constitution from start to finish. And we will be tracking this book in the first half of the semester. America's Constitution, A Biography. It's available in paperback. You can get it at most libraries, public libraries. It's available online if you want to purchase it. It's, I think, about $15 or so. I think maybe even a little less in paperback. To repeat, it is not required. You're going to be able to experience this course without going through this book. But if you want more detail and background, if you want to have a handy reference book later on for some of the themes of the course, America's Constitution, A Biography is available to you. And that's the first half of the course. And in fact, for the first half of the course, what we're going to do each week, this book has 12 chapters, each week we'll cover a different chapter of the book. And the book works through the text in textual order, the preamble, Articles 1, 2, 3, etc., till you get to the end, Article 7, and then the amendments in order, the first 10, 13, 14, 15, after the Civil War, and so on. So this book works you through the text of the Constitution, and this course will track in the first half this book. Each week, we'll do a different chapter of the book. And there are 12, each week we're going to do, 2 chapters of this book, and there are 12 chapters. So the first 6 weeks of the course, we'll work our way through the written Constitution. Now for the second half of the course, America's Unwritten Constitution, we have a second book. It's called America's Unwritten Constitution. It's also written by me. The subtitle of this book is The Precedents and Principles We Live By. This book also has 12 chapters. We're going to work through those chapters, 2 chapters a week. So just to kind of recap, we'll spend the first 6 weeks on the written Constitution, start to finish, and we'll focus on America's Constitution, A Biography. We'll spend the second 6 weeks pondering the unwritten Constitution that supplements the written, and we'll go through this book, America's Unwritten Constitution, 2 chapters a week. And that's pretty much the structure of the course in a nutshell. The substantive themes of the course, my claim will be that the written Constitution is more democratic than we've understood. When we read the document in historical context, it's much more about, in a phrase, we the people, than has conventionally been understood. Alas, the original document was also more pro-slavery, the original document, than we've been taught. And that pro-slavery aspect of the original Constitution almost destroys the project. It's going to lead to a massive civil war because the Constitution originally was both democratic and slavocratic, that is, pro-slavery. So that's the second theme of the course, the relationship between democracy and slavery, especially in the original Constitution, and that fundamental contradiction that almost destroyed the document. A third basic theme is that the original Constitution and its amendments, frankly, have been much more about national security than has conventionally been understood. So those are three of the substantive themes: democracy, slavery, and national security. And national security will be explained in context of geography and geostrategy and America's position in the world. So those are some of the themes of the first half of the course: democracy, slavery, and geostrategy / national security. The theme of the second half of the course is that there are various tools and techniques that you need to know not just what the Constitution says, but how to interpret it, the rules of constitutional interpretation, because there are some rules. Not everything counts in constitutional law. Textual argument is one of those techniques, rules of interpretation, but not the only one. So we'll talk about other tools and techniques of constitutional interpretation. We'll talk about the need to understand the document's structure as a whole, not in individual sentences, but the architecture of the whole thing, leading to concepts like federalism, separation of powers, limited government, the rule of law. We'll talk about the need to analyze the Constitution in light of case law, precedent, in light of the customs, the evolving customs of the American people. We'll talk about the Constitution still to be written in the 21st and 22nd centuries. We'll go beyond the written text in various ways, and those will be some of the themes of the second half of the course. We'll focus on America's state constitutions alongside its federal constitution. One or two final thoughts about the structure and format of the course. A picture is often worth 1,000 words, and for each lecture we're going to have a picture to get you started. I'll say a little bit about the picture here up on the screen at the end, just in a minute or two, but each chapter of the books begins with a picture, and we'll put those pictures up on the screen for you to see them, and if you understand the picture, you'll often understand the theme or themes of that chapter. So let's look at the image for the course as a whole. What picture is this, and what's it trying to tell you? Well, it's telling you that this is a course about words. You see text at the top of that picture, but also about people. You see people at the bottom, individuals at the bottom of that picture. And American constitutional law is about words and about deeds, about things that actual people did. People like George Washington here standing very prominently in this picture. The words that this image highlights aren't the entirety of the written Constitution. They're the preamble. And one theme of the course is the preamble is actually particularly important. It's only one sentence, but worth careful attention. And those first three words of the preamble are in particularly large type, particularly large script, we the people, and we're going to emphasize those words. And I'm going to try to explain what those words meant in context and continue to mean. The particular image that we have here, we the people, is actually taken from the National Constitution Center. That's actually, the top of this image is the facade of the National Constitution Center, which is a beautiful building in Philadelphia, right opposite Independence Hall, where the Constitution was actually drafted. That's the bottom of that picture, George Washington and others in the Philadelphia Convention, which met in the summer of 1787 and proposed the written Constitution. But the top here, that we the people, is taken from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. I strongly encourage you to visit the National Constitution Center to deepen your understanding. In fact, the new president of the Constitution Center is one of my former students. He took a version of this class himself. His name is Jeff Rosen, and I all my cards on the table. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that I helped launch the National Constitution Center way back when, about 15 years ago, and am an academic advisor to the center. So that's some of what you see in this picture. It's a picture about we the people, about words, and about actual people doing things. And we'll talk about that as part of the American Constitutional Project. I hope you think the picture is rather interesting and vivid, and I hope this course is interesting and vivid, and we're never going to lose sight of the text, ever, even when we go beneath it, and this picture is beneath it, and beyond it, and behind it. We're never going to lose sight of the text, and probably, if you had to pick the words of the text that are the most important, I don't think you could go wrong if you focused on the preamble in general, and those first three words, we the people in particular. Which brings me finally to the close of this lecture, this introductory lecture, and your assignment for our first sessions. I'd like you to read the text of the Constitution, including its amendments. It's about 8,000 words, as I said, a half hour. If you can't read the whole thing, at the very least, please read the preamble. It's a sentence long. So, in fact, reread it a couple of times. Try to think about what it's saying. And that's what we're actually going to spend our first two lectures talking about. Just one sentence of the Constitution, a supremely important sentence, the sentence that launches the whole thing. It doesn't describe itself explicitly as the preamble, though that word, preamble, is in effect unwritten, but that's what we all call it today. We call it the preamble, so that's an interaction of the written Constitution with the unwritten. We call it the preamble even though you won't see that word in the document. And my claim is that if you carefully ponder these words, they will help you understand three of the biggest questions of American constitutional law. One, how democratic was America's Constitution in context, in its historical context? Two, did it create an indivisible union, a union from which states would not be able to unilaterally secede? Exactly what do we mean, the United States, we the people of the United States? Exactly how united was the Constitution, were the states supposed to be under the Constitution? So how democratic was the thing? Did it create an indivisible, indissoluble union? Was Mr. Lincoln right in the Civil War, or was Jefferson Davis right in the Civil War? And finally, if it did create an indivisible union, if Mr. Lincoln was right, why? See you next week.